Alright, welcome to the review of UFC Undisputed 2010. Some background information we always start with. It was developed by Ukes, published by THQ, released around May 25th, 27th, or 28th, depending on where in the world you are. Let's just get to some of the improvements to start off. The producer for this game said that he cannot even play UFC 2009 because it's so poor compared to this year's model, and I have to agree. Just from playing it a little bit, I could already tell that there were improved controls. They added cage grappling and improved ground grappling. If you play last year's model, you'll notice immediately the controls feel very different. A lot more TKO, doctors can stop it this year. They added new fighting styles, karate, Greco-Roman wrestling, and Sambo. They also added more MMA brands that are actually exclusive to the sport, including post-fight attire and new arenas, including the O2 in London, GM Place, and I think there was one more with the Center Bell, perhaps. Yeah, I think that's it. Now let's get to some unfortunate for Xbox 360 owners, but good for PlayStation 3 owners news. The Ps3 got some exclusives for this deal. This game, Ois Gracie, Jens Pulver, and Dan Severn are all exclusive to the PlayStation 3 console for this game. Along with that, they added 5 exclusive Ultimates Fight to the Ultimate Fight category of the game. Those are added on a separate Blu-ray disc, I believe. Some of them are just from Ultimate Fight Nights, ranging from UFC 102 to UFC 60, Matt Hughes and Ois Gracie, UFC 66, Keith Jardine, Forrest Griffin. Just basically giving the PS3 owners some more options in the Ultimate Fights category, which I really like, was a good feature this year. Lets you relive some of the greatest fights with goals for either fighter, so you can change history, rewrite history however you want, use whichever fighter you want, and by doing that you unlock certain things to be used later on in the game if you accomplish level A, B, C, so on goals for each fighter on either side of them. Okay, there were also a lot of improvements to the roster being made a lot deeper. In addition to those exclusive PS3 fighters I mentioned, obviously the two biggest names added. Brock Lesnar, you know, the face of the UFC, all of a sudden burst onto the scene, ultra popular, and Kimbo Slice, you know, everybody seems to love Kimbo. He's kind of old there, but, you know, he's got the popularity, so I think those are the two biggest names, obviously Brock Lesnar being the cover fighter. But also on May 24th it was announced that the Tap Out crew from last year's game, as well as Shaquille O'Neal, would be made available as downloadable content files for fighters. Obviously those are probably going to be really popular in the game. You know, you can only use these fighters for so long. Now I think that's going to be, you know, where they go in the future, is just getting more fighters as more guys come up from, you know, the World Fighting Alliance, you know, no longer existing, but those levels, as they do in career mode, that lets you kind of progress. I think that's kind of the wave of this game, is all about progression. And as more fighters come up, they'll be made available. You can use your career fighters in exhibition, and as I kind of move into the career mode, I think it's really good how it's so deep this year, starting off in the now defunct World Fighting Alliance. Before, you know, you have to complete a couple amateur fights there before you're invited to the UFC. Dana White comes to your camp and formally invites you. You can either accept the invitation to turn pro, or you can wait a few matches. Either way, you really have to work hard in career mode. It's not just all about stat points this year and training strength, speed, and cardio. You actually have to work on skill points, and skills will degenerate if you don't work on them and use them in matches. Your skills for, say, head strikes, if you don't work on head strikes in matches and training, then you're going to lose those points, and you have to keep training to build them up. So obviously it's a lot more realistic. A lot more opportunities for non-training events, such as Rochelle Leah, she'll come into your camp, want to do training sessions where they tell you what to work on, they'll videotape it for inside access shows and UFC stuff. Just kind of more interactive, making it a more realistic game. Alright, before I'm done here, I just want to mention that, you know, if you haven't played this game, you really need to get it. It's a great game. I mean, it's right up there with Fight Night, you know, for boxing fans. This is one of the best fighting games I've seen really ever. I mean, obviously we can look forward to the EA Sports MMA game that Dana White and UFC have a big problem with, but, you know, I really don't think that game's going to be quite as good. It's not going to be as many of the UFC fighters, because Dana White said if you sign with that game, your career in the UFC is done. So that scared a lot of the fighters away from EA Sports. And EA Sports, you know, I mean, they made the Fight Night game, so obviously they're going to have a good engine to work off of. But I just don't think that the first year, without using the UFC guys, it's just not going to be as popular. But this game is definitely, you know, it's got 9.5s, pretty much from everyone that's reviewed it. And I have to say a 9 or 9.5 out of 10 is really what this game deserves. It has a few flaws, but for the most part, this game is really, really great. And so if you haven't played it yet, definitely go check it out. Please remember to comment, rate, subscribe. Thanks for watching.